This week on Forward.
I felt more and more as I did work around homelessness that it was this highly individualized disaster, this non-shared trauma. Really, like everyone just went through an earthquake or a flood or a fire, but no one knows that the other person just went through the same thing. We would never look at each other as like housed people as a primary identity. And yet we've defined an entire group of people by their lack of one physical need, which is the homeless. Given the precarity of 40% of people not knowing where they get $400 for an unexpected emergency, it's actually surprising that we don't have more people experiencing homelessness in this country. Like, what's keeping half the country from experiencing homelessness?
Hey everyone, this week on the podcast, I interview an incredible guy named Kevin Adler who started Miracle Messages, and he wrote a new book called When We Walk By. It's about homelessness. He spent the last 10 years or so reconnecting 800 homeless people to their loved ones and families. It's uplifting and invigorating. What else is going on this week? There's a guy named Dean Phillips who's running for president that I am having a lot of fun with, because most of you know I don't think Joe Biden is the right choice to run in 24. I think he'd lose to Trump, and the Democratic Party really should field some better candidates. If you want to see what I've been thinking about Dean Phillips, go to andrewyang.com/blog, or just go to andrewyang.com because that's where it is. Also this week, it looks like the SAG-AFTRA strike is over, thank goodness, and studios lost. When that happens, you think, wow, couldn't you have just cut this deal weeks or months ago? But I'm pumped on multiple levels. I have a lot of friends who are striking. Also, as a consumer, it'd be nice to have some good stuff to watch as opposed to the crap we're dealing with right now. I'm kidding. There's actually some good stuff going on right now in content world, but we could always use some more, and people need to be able to do their jobs and tell stories. I thought the midterms were a good sign in many respects. I think the misread, though, is that this means that Joe Biden is the right choice in 2024. I think there's a very big difference between voting for, let's say, women's reproductive rights or a state rep in Virginia, or even a young governor in Kentucky, than voting for Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden has singular qualities that voters ascribe to him, not all of them positive, shall we say. So excited for you to hear this conversation with Kevin Adler. And if you want to see some of the things that I am thinking about, go to andrewyang.com because I do write that stuff down. Subscribe to the newsletter if you don't already, because I send that out at least once a week. And hopefully we will have a real choice in 24. Dean Phillips, Team Dean, check him out. We're going to have him on the podcast before you know it, too. So tune in for that. Hey, YouTube, thanks for watching. Please do hit like and subscribe, and hit that bell if you want to be notified every time a new episode drops. Probably on Mondays, but hit that bell, and thank you. It is my pleasure to welcome to the podcast the founder and CEO of Miracle Messages and the author of the brand new book, When We Walk By, Forgotten Humanity, Broken Systems, and the Role We Can Each Play in Ending Homelessness in America. Kevin Adler. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, Andrew. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too, and congratulations on your work first and foremost, and this book, which is awesome and I think timely. I guess it could have been written at any point in the last number of years. It still would have been timely. It's not a lot like, oh, homeless people. I mean, obviously it's been with us, but I will say it seems more pressing now. And you open your book with, I think, a very, very relatable anecdote of you being in the Bay Area and then walking by homeless people and then feeling sort of uncomfortable and then saying, oh, like, what can I do? And then your exertion was to smile, was to make eye contact, was to like give them a thumbs up, just to acknowledge their humanity. But it wasn't like you started being an activist and philanthropist in this direction. You started out like most of us.
Yeah, it felt pretty basic. In fact, I mean, I didn't set out to be an activist or a philanthropist or anything else. I just set out to try to be a better person. And, having an uncle who was homeless for 30 years, I'd never thought of as Mark as a homeless man. But when he passed away, I realized that, the love and compassion and empathy I had for Mark when he wasn't at our, Christmas and Thanksgiving dinner table did not extend to the people I walk by every day on the streets of San Francisco. So it was as much a path to build my own capacity to see people on the streets, not as, problems to be solved, but as people to be loved.
Yeah, so your uncle passes away, which hurts. You have something of an epiphany while visiting his gravesite with your dad. And then you wound up actually starting an organization that reconnects homeless people with loved ones, which has now resulted in 800 plus people reconnecting with loved ones and in many cases getting off the street. So how did that come to pass? I mean, that's a lot. What happened after you visited your uncle's gravesite? And this is at this point, maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's about 10 years ago. Yeah, I left the gravesite with my dad, had a really heartfelt conversation, and realized that the intention of kind of having this gravesite for my uncle was really that we'd have a place to commemorate Mark's life and have a permanent resting place for this person who never had that in this life. And I got home and started scrolling through social media and realized that I was learning more about my random acquaintances on Facebook and Instagram than I was at my own uncle's grave. So I just started thinking, how can we use the storytelling tools that we have access to help people like my Uncle Mark? I'm a person of faith, and I was in church a few weeks later. The pastor had this prompt, who is Jesus? You had to answer that with some kind of art form or creative expression. I'm not an artist. I'm not a musician. Jesus doesn't need me to sing a song. But I was like, well, I've always loved using simple tools to help share our common humanity and kind of unveil what I feel is ever present. And I got this question on my heart that was really struck me. It was, how would Jesus use a smartphone? And
maybe Jesus wouldn't use a smartphone. I'm kidding. But if he were to use it,
if he were to use it, probably fewer cat videos and selfies, right?
So you started this organization. What came first? The first beneficiary or homeless neighbor that you helped, or the organization itself?
Yeah, I mean, the first point was I spent a year just listening. Spent a year with 24 individuals experiencing homelessness who volunteered to wear GoPro cameras around their chests.
Wow.
And narrate their experience of what life is like on the streets. And the premise was, hey, I just walked by you. You're still here. What's it like to be you? And I watched dozens of hours of pretty heartbreaking footage. And, the two things that struck me, Andrew, was first, every time you'd see a kid walk by, the kid would tug on their mom or dad's sleeve. They'd point, they'd look, they'd ask questions. And half the time the parent would scold them and say, no, that's dangerous. Don't do that. And I'd always think, gosh, those kids probably knew something or know something that we've forgotten as adults. But the second piece that's really apropos to Miracle Message's founding story was in one of the clips I heard someone say, I never realized I was homeless when I lost my housing, only when I lost my family and friends.
Yeah, you opened the book with this idea of relational poverty, and you're suggesting that we're relationship poor, and that kind of goes hand in hand with being homeless.
Yeah, I think it's so it's such an extreme version of low social capital, to use the sociological term, but such a level of relational isolation, brokenness, disconnectedness, that it's almost inconceivable unless you get that up close and personal to it. I read your book recently, The War on Normal People, and one of the things that you really talk about at length is how many people in the United States right now are one paycheck away from not being able to pay rent. And given the precarity of 40% of people not knowing where they get $400 for an unexpected emergency, it's actually surprising that we don't have more people experiencing homelessness in this country. Like, what's keeping half the country from experiencing homelessness? And what we're finding is family, friends, community, church, synagogue, mosque, like community, relationships. And so if you don't have that, or you've lost that, or it was never quite supportive enough, or it was just so resource depressed to begin with, it can be very difficult to get off the streets and stay off the streets if you're in that situation.
Yeah, you refer to this group as the proto-homeless, or maybe someone else did, which I thought was interesting. It's like the could potentially be homeless if something breaks the wrong way. So let's try and define the scope of this. How many people are homeless in America at any moment in time?
Yeah, at any given night, it's just under, well, it depends on the estimates, but around 600,000 people experience homelessness any given night. But over the course of a year, people who may come in and out of homelessness, maybe self-resolve or, are unseen, are doubled up, tripled up. So maybe not what we think of by the HUD definition as experiencing homelessness. It's probably closer to about 10 times that. And so in the book, we estimate about 6 million people experience homelessness each year.
Wow, that's a lot. So in a country of 330 million, let's call it something like 2%.
2%. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 1 out of 50 might experience homelessness in a given year. One interesting thing in your book is you actually list a bunch of celebrities who are homeless at one moment in time. Some of them I knew. I was like, oh yeah, I knew Jewel was homeless, but then like some of the others, I was like, really? Like I didn't know.
Who surprised you?
David Letterman surprised me.
David Letterman, yeah.
Chris Pratt, I guess there was, and then I thought, oh wait, there was some episode about him living in a van or something, which, and I feel like vehicles are where a lot of folks take shelter. If you live in a vehicle, like let's say your car, your Toyota Camry, are you technically homeless?
Yes, you are, absolutely, yeah. And I think even within the celebrity circle, if we widen that to folks who are, successful by whatever measures of, monetary fame, power, a lot more people have experienced homelessness than will share that they have experienced homelessness. I
bet we don't know about some of it. It's totally true. So you start Miracle Messages about 10 years ago, and and it starts with this footage, hours and hours of verite footage from people who are struggling with homelessness. What did you do next?
Yeah, so it started out, just to give the quick founding story, I basically took a walk down Market Street, went up to everyone I saw who was visibly homeless and asked, do you have any family or friends you'd like to reconnect to? Met a man named Jeffrey. He said he hadn't seen his family in 22 years. Sat down, recorded a short video from him to his niece and nephew and his sister and his dad. Went home that night, did a search online, found a Facebook group connected to his hometown, and posted the video there with a short note.
Nice work.
Just the entrepreneur in me, right? Just get things done, right? And within 1 hour, the video was shared hundreds of times, made the local news that night. Classmates started commenting saying, hey, I went to high school with Jeffrey. I work in construction. Does he need a job? I work at the congressman's office. Does he need health care? In a week, the town raised over $5,000 to try to bring him home. And in the first 20 minutes of the post, his sister got tagged. And we got on the phone the next day, and she told me that Jeffrey had been a missing person for 12 years.
No.
So that was the starting point. Yeah.
You thought, wow, we did a lot of good there. We probably saved this person's life. It's very heartwarming that the town rallied in that way. And so then you thought, wow, like maybe there's another person like Jeffrey.
Jeffrey's not the only one, and this shouldn't be happening, right? You want to make an impact in the world, you have to figure out how to make the impact in one person's life first. And so I still didn't know what I didn't know. I felt like a total fraud trying to do this work, because for me, it wasn't homelessness that I cared about per se. I cared about homelessness, but it wasn't my driving issue. But it was just my belief in the intrinsic value of each person, interconnectedness of us all. And, any objective analysis of homelessness living in San Francisco, like circa 2014, 2015, or circa 2023, people experiencing homelessness are not seen as, precious part of our community and valuable or, connected. So I just started talking to people, having conversations, and initially set a goal of reuniting 10 people, hit the goal, and then just went to 100, hit that goal, And then I set a goal of 1 million. Have not hit that
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah, I haven't hit that goal yet.
Haven't hit that goal, but
Wait,
there's a lot of need. There's a lot of need. So we're over 800 now reunions as our first program. So.
This podcast is sponsored by Helix Sleep. It's a pretty short list of things you can do that are going to make you happier, healthier, more energetic, more productive every single day. You know what's on that list? Getting the right freaking mattress. And what's the right mattress for you? If you go to Helix Sleep, you take their personalized sleep quiz and they will send you one of 20 unique mattresses made for you and you alone. Well, not you and you alone, like 5% of people. Do the math. For a 100-night free trial, you can sleep on this thing for 3 months. It will keep you cool. Don't just take my word for it. My kids seek out this mattress in the house. It's the #1 rated mattress picked by GQ and Wired magazine. This mattress will actually make you happier, healthier, and more productive. Helix is offering 20% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/yang. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. So you have over 800 reunions. I imagine some of these messages have gone unanswered. How many messages do you think you've put out?
Yeah, for every, by the numbers, what we kind of estimate. So for every 100 messages that we record, well, first, for every 300, 400 people that we talk to, maybe 100 will want to record a message. And it's not just a video message. There's audio, text, online form, written form, and then we have a hotline, which I actually don't even know my wife's phone number by heart, but I know this phone number. It's 1-800-MISS-YOU. So trying to be very accessible to our in-house neighbors. Yeah, so and that's a whole story how to get a 1-800 phone number in modern age. It's a very complicated telephony companies that own them. But anyways, so we have 1-800-MISS-YOU. So for every 300, 400 people that we offer a service to, maybe about 100 will say, yes, I'd like to record a message. Yep. And then of those 100, 50 will be able to find the loved ones. And then half of those, so 25, will be able to help facilitate a reunion. So it's about a quarter of the people who record a message will end up reuniting. But when we do find the family, and that's a big, when, it's not all the time, eight times out of 10, they're excited to reconnect, and it's a positive outcome.
That's great. Again, restore your faith in human nature. So you've been building this very wholesome, lovely human organization over this last number of years, and you expanded to include basic income over the last couple of years for folks in tough circumstances.
Yeah, we were doing the reunion services, and we heard feedback from the people we were serving consistently saying, hey, I buy this whole relational poverty thing. I'm relationally impoverished, but my family is part of the problem, not part of the solution. What are you going to do for me? And how are you going to help me? And so the starting point for the basic income actually began with us creating a phone buddy program where we invite volunteers. Initially, it was in the Bay Area. Now it's around the world. Folks, Chile, Kenya, US, Canada, throughout Europe, who have committed 30 minutes a week to have a one-to-one phone call or text message exchange with an unhoused neighbor in the US. Big brothers, big sisters for our unhoused neighbors. And it was through those relationships and the feedback we heard as people built trust, built a sense of connectedness, getting to know someone very unlike themselves.
Yeah. I'm with these people too. It's like if you put me on the phone with a homeless person, I'd be like, "Yo, man, I'm just gonna send you $200." It's like my pep talk might help you somewhat, but let's just skip that. And do you have any Venmo or Cash App or something I can use? Let me hit that for just a brief moment. What proportion of folks in homelessness actually have a phone or a means of being connected that way, or a means of receiving money? If I were just to be like, yo, I'm just going to send you, because they probably can't. Do they have those tools?
Yeah, it's a great question. Within the shelter, population of people who have some kind of form of shelter, it's a much higher percentage. I'd say the majority do. I mean, if you think, if God forbid one of us were to experience homelessness, what's the last thing you're giving up or the first thing you're wanting to get back in your hands, right? It's some kind of phone. And there are programs like Obama phones and Lifeline Wireless, where you can, by having some kind of federal benefit, be eligible for a free phone, free data plan. Unsheltered homelessness, not only if you may have a phone, but digital connectivity, paying for a data plan, charging it, having it lost, stolen, broken all the time. So it makes it a lot harder to reach that segment of the demographic.
All right, so you start a buddy program, and then the buddies are like, "Yo, I got to send this person some money." So then you started incorporating some money transfer.
I don't think they phrase some. I mean, if we can have you as a buddy, and then we could totally do that. But
it would take me about 10 seconds to be like, "Yo, I got to send this person some money."
Yeah, well, we had folks say that they love the person they trust and they need money, so that was the starting point. But we've actually had folks who have declined initially a basic income because they say, I feel like I get so much value already from my friend. Isn't there someone who needs it more than me? And these are folks experiencing homelessness. So it's not, to create this like Pollyannish, like it's just relationships. But I do think that the friendships are pretty valuable too. So.
I mean, friendships can keep you alive. It's true. I would say friendships plus $200 is like a
or
whatever.
We're doing $750 a month for a year, right? Yeah, the initial pilot we did was $500 a month for 6 months, and 14 people got that money, $3,000 paid out over 6 months, and then within 6 months, 2/3 of the folks who were unhoused at the beginning were able to secure housing and basically use the money better than we could have used it for them, and so that was like the small but like, wow, there's something here. Let's build on this.
This podcast is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Going online without ExpressVPN is like changing while leaving your window wide open. Gross! You might not have anything to hide, but why give random creeps a chance to invade your privacy? That's why I use ExpressVPN. It's super easy. You hit a button and then you just beam in. Best of all, no one can see what you're doing. No big tech companies, no ad companies, no other companies. Why use ExpressVPN? When you go online, it is just you and you're surfing. No one can see it. It's the way to go because a bunch of big companies say, hey, all of you high-end consultants and spies, use ExpressVPN. Secure your online activity by visiting expressvpn.com/yang today. That's expressvpn.com/yang, and you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/yang. So one of the things you must have directly experienced, and it does come up in your book, is that in places like New York and San Francisco, we're spending tens of thousands of dollars a year per homeless person. And thus was homelessness solved. No, it's not true. Like, you still go out, you're like, what the heck's going on? And so there's a ton of money being spent that does not seem to be doing the trick, in large part because, to your point, it's not going to the human involved or the family involved. It's going to something else. It's going to the org. It's going through an agency, and it doesn't get to where you'd like it to go.
Yeah, I think one of the things in my book that I wanted to make sure was centered was just the level of paternalism in a lot of our service systems, where we assume we know what's better for the person and their family, rather than trusting them as we probably want to be trusted and invested in. And that basic income is a form of that, but also meeting a person where they're at. If you have 100 people experiencing homelessness, you have 100 stories and contexts and situations. And, a mother with a single child escaping a domestic violence situation is very different than someone who has severe mental health issues. Substance abuse issues is very different than someone who, had a health issue that caused them to not be able to work anymore. And now they're needing some kind of disability or some time to rehab. So I don't believe I think there's a role, of course, for the services we have. And if the programs that we have weren't in place, we'd have a lot more people experiencing homelessness. But to call it efficient or effective, I think would be, inaccurate. And so, we're trying to meet people where they're at, but not leave them there in the work we do at Miracle Messages. So.
Well, it sounds like you're being very euphemistic about some of these programs, because I'm clearly, more down on them. I mean, you probably interact with them all the livelong day, so it's not for you to be like, oh, these things are terrible. But I'll say, like, I've looked at the numbers and been like, what the hell's going on? Like, we spend so much money in ways that are ineffective, and then you go to the org. And the tough thing too is, like, I've met with the orgs, I've hung out with the orgs, and the orgs consist generally of good people trying to do positive work. Which is one reason why I sense that you might be like, look, I'm not going to talk smack about various folks. But the problem is that, I mean, there are a lot of problems, but it's like, if you're the good org trying to do good work, and then you run into like a difficult, thorny situation individual, then there are certain limits to what you can and can't do. I mean, you pretty much need to access the folks who are most helpable, I suppose, in many ways. There are organizations like Fountain House that do kind of a hybrid where, are you familiar with that organization? It's here in New York.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, no, it's like a house where you show up. It's like kind of shelter plus, community plus. It's got like a bunch of services. So there, mental illness is a pretty big theme. And so they do a bunch of things, and they're a nonprofit that, does do great work. But still, I mean, when you walk around a place like New York or San Francisco, I mean, you can't miss the evident homelessness. And then
I tried in the book to really strike a balance between recognizing and identify what I call like the homelessness industrial complex,
Yeah, that's the one. That's what I was describing, man. The homelessness industrial complex.
Totally. I mean, success is measured not by outcomes, but by units of service provided. And that outputs versus outcome is a fun, it leads to the situation we're in, where you have siloed service providers, one size fits all. But I think what sometimes gets missed as a nuance in the conversation that's important is like, homeless services don't cause homelessness, right? We have to look at the housing situation we're in, the income inequality, criminal justice system, foster care system, where 1 out of every 3 kids who age out of the foster care system by the time they're 26 years old will experience homelessness. So that's where I think, we'd have a lot more people experiencing homelessness. There's a lot more efficiencies that needed. And I'm not a apologist for the homeless service system. I mean, we literally have built an entire organization on the periphery. We don't work that closely, other than like, hey, come visit. We're happy to work with you. But I do think there's like a broader understanding of homelessness that sometimes gets missed about what causes homelessness. So,
how much of your work is in San Francisco versus other environments?
Yeah, our team is totally virtual, remote around the country. So we have 4 or 5 kind of key regions. So Bay Area. So we do San Francisco and Oakland with our current randomized control trial of the basic income in the Phone Buddy program. And then we have Los Angeles County, South Florida. We have a team member there that works with a lot of great organizations on the ground. And then we are starting to have more student chapters, like UT Austin. We have a bunch of students that will go on their free time to Sunrise Navigation Center, Community First Village in Austin, and offer our services, either the Phone Buddy program or the reunion services. And then we do get inquiries around the country around our hotline, but those 4 or 5 regions are kind of the main ones.
Imagine running for president and wanting to share what you experienced in a way that's entertaining, edifying, and maybe even a little bit scary. That's The Last Election, out in bookstores now, a novel about an independent presidential candidate, a journalist with a massive story, and what the heck could be our next/last election. Check it out at andrewyang.com. Well, congratulations. You built an awesome org, and the stories recur throughout the book. How did the book come about, and what are your hopes for the book, aside from it becoming, because I'm an author, so, aside from becoming a bestseller and changing the world like every author aspires to. But I mean, it's a very timely and important work. I enjoyed it a lot. I learned a lot from it, even though I consider myself fairly with it on a lot of these issues. But it's clear you wrote the book with a purpose in mind.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I'm appreciate that. And I think there's a couple things. First and foremost, just like the stories that I tried to lead each chapter with and have kind of interwoven throughout to illuminate a theme. Those stories have just totally transformed my understanding of this issue. And, I've posted on social media, we've had media coverage in the past of our work, but I felt like the context and the broader narrative was missing, 2-minute soundbite or, post one off. So I think being able to honor these stories, of Elizabeth and, being in her 50s and having colon cancer, losing her job as a teacher, going through chemotherapy and ending up at a shelter, like that is forever shaped and shifted my understanding of homelessness. So one was honoring the stories and weaving them together with the broader themes. I think the second reason was, my background prior to doing Miracle Messages and my work as a social entrepreneur. I did my graduate work in sociology, and my research was on how disasters and shared traumas can act as a catalyst to like bring people together or tear people apart. You go through a flood, an earthquake, a fire. There is this emergence of what, is considered in sociological words, like terms, is like the emergence of the therapeutic community, and it's short-lived. It's not lasting. But anyways, I felt more and more as I did work around homelessness that it was this highly individualized disaster, this non-shared trauma. And yet everyone, when we see it, we think of it as this like, private thing, and you almost assume, well, what did you do wrong? This notions of individualism of like, who's to blame? But the more I thought about it, I was like, this is just really like everyone just went through an earthquake or a flood or a fire, but no one knows that the other person just went through the same thing. And I thought that perhaps if we brought this broader narrative, I do mention about the disaster element, but I really focus on other systems that perhaps like will activate our humanity a little bit more than we are right now.
Yeah, and that is a big theme in the last part of the book. It is about trying to rekindle humanity, which I appreciated a great deal. So what can people do to help? And I know that's somewhat fraught, given that you run this awesome organization, miraclemessages.org. Check it out. You too can help connect someone with their family and become a buddy, donate. But not aside from, because what's interesting is, and I do appreciate the fact that you open the book by being like, look, guys, like, I am just like you, but then you've had this journey you're on that has now resulted in hundreds, probably thousands of people being helped in various ways. What would you ask someone to do in their own lives? Or it could be just, go to miraclemessages.org, send money, become a mentor, buy the book, spread the message.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the things. We try to make our services as accessible as possible. So, right now we have a wait list of individuals who are unhoused, who've raised their hand and said, I need a friend to talk to, and we don't have enough volunteers to match them with. So wow. Inviting folks to commit, 20 minutes a week, 30 minutes a week. We assign a phone number through dial pad. You can use Google Voice. You don't have to use your device number. There's weekly trainings, there's support calls. So definitely, if folks want to be a phone buddy and being able to be in a relationship, that's great. And they can sign up at miraclemessages.org.
Awesome.
But I think, I think more broadly, like this idea that we care about this issue. Everyone says, this is an issue that matters to them. It's one of the top cited issues in our cities. But I think very few of us can say we know someone who's currently experiencing homelessness in any capacity. And that to me is part of the problem. It's this abstraction. We don't know their names. We don't know their stories at an intimate level. So honestly, just being able to say by the end of the year, hey, what does it take to, maybe it's the person you walk by every day, who, you've said hi to, but you never taken a moment to cheer their story, going to a local shelter, soup kitchen, doing a phone buddy program. Because I do think transformation can happen through relationships. And in fact, that's one of the only ways I've seen, hearts and minds change on this issue. And I think, the last one is the terms and the language that we use, matter a great deal. We would never look at each other as like housed people as a primary identity. And yet we've defined an entire group of people by their lack of one physical need, which is the homeless. So I try to, just be a little bit more, circumspect in the language I use, people experiencing homelessness, unhoused neighbors. And it's not to be like overly, bureaucratic, pedantic, like procedural. It's more just making sure we really see someone as someone's son or daughter, brother or sister, rather than as like a homeless person, and that's not their primary identity. So
Congratulations, Kevin. This is a very uplifting, beautiful message. The book is great. Your organization is great. I'm going to make a donation to Miracle Messages, miraclemessages.org, to just show that you're doing awesome, incredible work, that if people were to heed your message of humanity, we'd be in much better shape, not just on homelessness, but on a lot of other issues.
Well, thanks, Andrew. And thanks for always leading with humanity and all the work you do. I mean, it's really a pleasure to get to know you as a friend and to, be in conversation with you.
Right back at you, Kevin. You're a better person than just about all of us, really. Like, who the heck could say they've reunited, 800 plus people with their loved ones? The founder of Miracle Messages, it's miraclemessages.org. Author of When We Walk By, Forgotten Humanity, Broken Systems, and the Role We Can Each Play in Ending Homelessness in America. Check him out. Is there a way that people can follow you personally, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm on, I guess, all the social media. Most of it's just Kevin F. Adler. So Instagram, Twitter, Kevin F. Adler. So you can find me there.
Excellent. Maybe we can get to your 1 million person goal, man. Screw it. Let's get these 1 million people. I mean, heck. We might, look at it. It's like any moment. Let's go for the 1 million.
Let's go for the 1 million. Yeah, let's make it happen.